Go ahead, Regent Peterson. You may be muted.
Good afternoon, everyone. Before I ask Jess to call the roll, I want to start off with my usual reminders to help our meeting go smoothly. So first, I encourage everybody to mute your microphones while others are speaking to help cut down on any extra background noise. If you want to be acknowledged to engage in the discussion, please raise your hand. And finally, remember to identify yourself when making comments or asking questions. Also, for all those who have joined us for the call today, please keep your presentations focused and direct, as we'll only have an hour to get through a very full agenda. Before we do get started, I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome the two newest members of the board, Dr. Ashok Rai and UW-Stevens Point student Brianna Tucker. We're pleased that you're both here and able to join us today, and we're planning a much more formal and fulsome introduction for the two of you at the board's June meeting. So welcome aboard, and with that, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Regent President Peterson.
Here.
Regent Vice President Greavy.
Here.
Regent Atwell.
Here.
Regent Bechtel. Regent Bogus.
Here.
Regent Cologne.
Here.
Regent Jones.
Here.
Regent Klein.
Here. Sorry.
Regent Levzow.
Here.
Regent Manydeeds. Regent Miller.
Here.
Regent Peterson.
Here.
Regent Rye.
Here.
Regent Saffold. Regent Stanford Taylor. Regent Tucker.
Here.
Regent Walsh.
Here.
Regent Weatherly.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Jess. Are there board members who wish to declare any conflicts of interest with either of the items on our open session agenda today? Okay, hearing none, let's proceed. Let's start off with a report from President Thompson, who will discuss several items of importance since our last meeting. I'll turn it over to you, President Thompson.
President Thompson, you may be muted.
It kind of gets my 5 minutes. Yes. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, and I would also like to welcome the two new members of the board. Congratulations on your appointment, and looking forward to serving with you and assisting you in any way I possibly can. Good afternoon to the board. I have a very brief presence report today to provide you with a few quick updates. First, as we toured the state in recent weeks to advocate for our capital budget, we literally faced breaking news. As part of their regular spring maintenance, UW-Madison staff identified a potential concern regarding expansion joint on the northwest section of the Humanities building on the Madison campus. The Department of Administration subsequently brought in a structural engineering team to assess the situation, and they have recommended that we vacate the first, second, 6th, and 7th floor on the northwest side of the building. And there are no 3rd, 4th, or 5th floors in that part of the building. These areas are going to remain closed until all recommended repairs are completed, and that includes the Department of Administration's authorization for a contractor to install shoring at the affected joint. A full engineering assessment of the Humanities building is now ongoing. This comes on the heels of necessary repairs at Van Heist Hall, which I addressed at the April board meeting. Due to excellent weather conditions, I am pleased to be able to report to the board that the panels along the 3rd and 4th floor have now been removed and temporary edge and railing materials have been installed. A project to design and install permanent railings and edge materials, as well as to stabilize the 19th floor, is going to be considered by the State Building Commission in late May. Inspections are expected to take place later this week to ascertain when faculty and staff can fully return to Van Nuys. One other update, I am very happy and be able to report and to share the news that our Procure to Pay, our P2P project that you've heard me talk about many times before, known as Shop UW Plus, was successfully launched on April 16th, right on target. Shop UW Plus replaces and improves the purchasing functionality in the UW system's current shared financial system. Shop at UW and various other campus purchasing applications and Shop UW Plus will improve processing workflows, eliminate paper transactions, and make accounts payable processes more efficient and transparent across the entire UW system. We're also going to be able to get rid of some of the pay cards, save a lot of money, and be able to buy in bulk. A big improvement for the university. The project is started several years ago, and now we were able to complete it on time and under budget. When I came on board, I was adamant that I wanted to help the UW become more efficient and more cost effective. This is a giant step in the right direction. Again, I thank our system and campus leadership for the time and effort they have put into getting Shop UW Plus up and running. A job well done. This is going to improve how we do businesses to support the Wisconsin idea. President Peterson, that concludes my report.
Thank you, President Thompson, and congratulations on P2P getting done. Any questions for President Thompson this afternoon before we move on to item 4? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to item 4, which is a contractual agreement between UW Superior and Interlake Maritime Services. I believe Chancellor Wachter is on, as well as several of her team members and staff. Chancellor Wachter, can I turn the microphones over to you?
Yes, and I'm going to turn the microphone over to our CBO and our director of the Lake Superior Research Institute for a little background and information.
Thank you, Chancellor.
Great. Thank you very much, everyone, for your time this afternoon. We really appreciate it. A little overview on this project. It's an agreement with Interlake Steamship Company, and this project came about in conjunction with work that we do with the U.S. Department of Transportation and connections that we have there. The project focuses on ballast water management and monitoring and meeting new regulatory standards. Working with Interlake Steamship Company to modify one of their vessels to add a piece of equipment that will enable our Lake Superior Research Institute to collect research data. And I do believe this contract to be in the best interest of the university. At this time, Matt, I'll invite you to just make some brief comments as well.
Chancellor Jeff, could
Hello, Matt.
I now see him, but I wonder if
I
he's
see
muted.
him, but
Chancellor, I think we've been able to unmute his line, but we're not getting his audio. Could you perhaps text him?
I sent him a message here real quick.
Okay. Thank you, Joe. Chancellor, given we're on a bit of a time schedule, would it make sense for us to pause and do item 5 and then come back to you?
I suppose it depends if there's questions about the kind of research that is conducted with Matt and LSRI with regards to ballast water projects.
How about we do this? How about we move the motion? Presume
I'll
we'll
move
get a
it.
second. Do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Okay.
I think this is Regent
Oh,
Atwell. I think it
thank
sounds
you,
like a
Bob.
great,
Second,
great project.
Very good. And the second,
Tracy.
okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Limited discussion on this matter. Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you very much. Yeah, Matt did message me. He was having technical difficulties, so thank you for your patience this afternoon.
Thank you, Chancellor. Thank you, Jeff. And again, I would ask folks that you mute your line if you're not providing a presentation. At this point, we'll move on to item 5, where we're doing our all agency maintenance and repair work. I'll ask Senior Associate Vice President Alex Rowe, who I see here, to provide us a brief overview of this item. Alex.
Yes, thank you, Regent President Peterson. On behalf of UW Stout, we would like to, given the state of the underground utility system and pits along Broadway Street, to replace those. We have significant flooding in that area, which is quite a difficult situation for our staff, hazardous to repair and maintain. So this is going to allow us to fix that underground electrical system, put in a new transformer, and achieve not only a better electrical system, but a safe working environment for our team. And that is the project before you.
Thank you, Alex. So we have a project before us. Can I have a motion to approve the project?
So moved, Mike Jones.
Thank Mike Jones. Can I have a
Second, Tracy Klein.
Thank you, Regent Klein. Discussion on item 5. All right, hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Thank you, as usual, Alex. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here today. Okay, we're moving on. The next 2 items on our agenda, items 6A and 6B, address changes to the board's bylaws. I introduced the first item, Resolution 6A, which proposes a small but important change to the bylaws at our April meeting. Due to a process concern raised by my colleagues, I withdrew the item from consideration and proposed we address it today. As I said last month, I feel strongly that this board should, whenever possible, operate as openly and transparently as possible. For this reason, I'm reintroducing the proposal to change our bylaws that will require a roll call vote versus a secret ballot for the election of officers. At this time, I'll move the motion and ask for a second to approve Resolution 6A.
Second, Mike Jones.
Thank you, Mike. We have a motion, we have a second. Do we have some discussion on item 6A?
Drew, Bob Atwell here.
Yep, Regent Atwell, go ahead.
I guess it won't surprise anybody. I think we should defer consideration of this matter till after the pending election of a new region president at the June meeting. I just think it's inappropriate to change the voting procedures in the middle of a contested election. And I don't see the urgency of doing it at this time. And so I will be voting no on the motion.
Thank you, Bob. Other discussion?
Regent President Peterson.
Yes, Regent Walsh, please.
Thank you. After the somewhat tense discussion at the April meeting, I was hopeful that we would have broader communication about this issue with the members of the board. And that did not occur. And clearly it seems to me from the feelings related at that meeting that there was much we to talk about. And so I would have been comfortable if, for example, we would have appointed a small group of, say, regents of both sides of the aisle appointees to discuss this governance committee and what they might do, and perhaps this particular item. I think we've been asking for a governance committee since the search failed last year. And I realized there was a pandemic in all of that. Everybody was stretched very thinly, not only with their board work, but also with our jobs, which all changed tremendously during that time. I still feel uncomfortable with the timing of this, and I feel uncomfortable with the lack of discussion that we've had about why this needs to take place now. And is this really something we want to pull apart out of our bylaws? And I can only go back to my experience on other boards, certainly not a large, important public board like this. But when bylaw changes happen, typically it's over a period of months of discussion and done in a holistic way so that we can come to our bylaws with a fresh look and a fresh approach. And I know the bylaws for this group have not been touched in quite some time. And my voting against this does not mean I think we shouldn't change bylaws. I think we should review them as a group. There are smart people at this table, and I would really like to see us move forward with this, but not with a single piece like this that I just feel we haven't adequately discussed.
Thank you, Regent Walsh. I'd go back to my April statement, and I appreciate your comments. Back in April, I talked about, and if people could please mute, I'd appreciate it. I talked about the importance of being open, being transparent. As part of our presidential search, there was some criticism that we weren't as open and transparent as we should have been. As I've said, since that point in the process, we've tried to learn from that. When we addressed and when I brought forward this small change to board bylaws, I tried to do that 60 days in advance of the June meeting. We had a process concern where we said we'd like to have some more time to think about this. And so we've given folks an additional month to do just that. The second component part of item 6 deals with that governance committee. And I have been in conversations, and folks will speak, I will speak to that, but I think that is appropriate that we do a larger review of our bylaws and our governance practices. So I think we're trying to address both short-term and long-term concerns, Karen, but I appreciate your thoughts.
Regent President
Regent
Peterson.
Jones. Oh, Regent Jones, and then I think Regent Klein. I apologize, I've got quite a few of you on my screen. So Mike and then Tracy.
Great, thank you very much. To my understanding, there are two basic ways to vote. One is ballot voting, which is private, mostly private. And I don't like calling it secret because it has a pejorative term. It's just private, and that's okay. And it's widely used. Ballot voting is widely used. The other form is voice voting, which is generally public and open. And in this case, I have absolutely zero problem voice voting for whoever will be the next president of our board personally. but both these forms are widely used. So one's not necessarily better than the other from my perspective, but I'm very comfortable with voice voting.
Thank you, Regent Jones. Regent Klein.
Yeah, and I would just say, and thank you, Regent President Peterson. I would say that I was I was more upset last time through on the process issue. I felt like, it was the only one change we were suggesting to the bylaws at a time when, frankly, a couple of us had been asking for, a look at governance and a look at the bylaws for a better part of a year. And so I'm very satisfied that I don't really, for myself, I don't care if it's a roll call or a secret ballot. I'm very willing to do either, or a ballot, I guess. But I feel comfort in the fact that leadership has agreed that they will establish a bylaws committee, a special region committee to review the bylaws, because I think really there's some things that we can really step up our game as regents, and that's been an issue for me for a very long time. I think that we've got a tremendously smart people, and I mean, I'm always so grateful to be on this board with all of you. But sometimes I feel like our deliberations get stilted by one thing or another, whether that's the bylaws or sometimes it's state statute. But I really feel strongly that, while at least I'm on this board, my biggest thing is I want to make sure I make a difference. And I think that there are some tune-ups that could occur from a bylaws perspective that will assist with that. So that is, I was very heartened that we're going to be voting on that next, and I am voting in favor of the change in voting.
Thank you, Regent Klein. The only comment I would make, and this is just hindsight, I think that we overlooked process in April, and that was unfortunate. And I think having voted this matter in April probably would have benefited all of us greatly. And so for that, I'm disappointed, but I take responsibility. I think we're improving the process by addressing both of these matters, both short-term and long-term. But I felt compelled to make that statement. Other questions or comments from board members?
Hector has his hand up.
Yes, Regent Cologne.
Thank you, President Peterson. So I wasn't at the last meeting, but I would just ask, what is the problem that we currently face that we're trying to solve through this bylaw change?
Well, I think, Hector, when we were at the April meeting, I talked about how when I went back and did research on how we conduct elections, I found that we perform elections by ballot. And I was astonished at the time, as what I said, given every single matter that we address as a board, we do by way of a voice vote, which can then turn to a roll call. And so I said, and I believed then, and I still believe today, that in an attempt to be fully open and transparent as a public board like we are, that was the right approach to take. And so that was the reason for bringing that short-term bylaw change before the board in April. And then we postponed it to May, which is why I'm bringing it back here today. My views haven't changed. I think it's a consistency thing. I think that it's the right approach for us to take. And as I said, in hindsight, I wish we would have taken it in April.
Is this, are we aware of best practices across other Board of Regents? Do they do it this way, the way you're proposing, or how do they do it?
Yeah, our legal counsel has done a review, and it depends on systems, but a number of them roll call vote, and some do secret ballot, or rather ballot. I stand corrected, Mike Jones. But in this instance, I think it's a matter of what do we do. And I was, as I said, surprised when I went and did my own research to learn that we vote by ballot, not by roll call, which it's the only time that we do that. And in fact, when we take up this matter now, it will be a roll call vote given the blend of opinions. Regent Tucker, welcome. First of all, nice of you to be with us today. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. I know I just joined, but from what I've heard, transparency seems to be something people value and trust. And I think transparency is a great thing. And I feel like once you know that people will hear what you have to say and what you vote on, it really makes you think about what you are going to say and who you're going to vote for. And it makes you think about big decisions like this. And I just believe that this transparency will overall benefit the UW system and our reputation. And I think it'll develop our thinking habits, knowing that people will know whatever we vote on. Thank you.
Thank you, Regent Tucker. I see Regent Dr. Rai. Go ahead, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Regent President. You know, I am 11 days into this, so pardon me if I stumble. I had about 4 days to read on it, and it was a 1-week anniversary when I got a chance to understand this. So I spent some time trying to understand the why behind this, and I've heard the word transparency multiple times, but really wanted to go back and see why the bylaws actually call for a ballot vote. I went to Wisconsin Statute 19.88, which is designed to actually protect the best interests of our citizens and transparency of not only this board, but all Wisconsin boards. And in that, it actually has a carve out for officer voting to allow for a ballot. So for that to be there, I needed to dig farther to understand the why. Why would there need to be an exception when the Wisconsin statutes are there to protect our citizens, to create a transparent government as much as possible? In researching the latest edition of Robert's Rules, 4630, while some form of election by ballot is generally appropriate in organized societies, it also goes on to 4642 in Robert's Rules, although unusual, an election can be held by roll call. So our definition, our change here would be abnormal. It would be out, it would be unusual per Robert's Rules to actually have a roll call vote for an officer election. Now, not being a Robert's Rules expert, I went to parliamentarian C. Allen Jennings, who wrote a simplified version of Robert's Rules to be eloquent. In quoting him, ballot voting is by far the surest way to allow for the free will of the membership. So understanding a parliamentarian's perspective on there and understanding that our votes when cast for those who lead us are generally by ballot, whether it be a citizen vote or a board vote, for reasons to allow for free will. I understand the need for transparency and fully support it and hope to support that for the next 7 years on this board. But also in researching the why, there seems to be a balance between transparency and making sure that the election for our future leaders, whether it be this election or other future leaders, allows those who vote for their leader to do so of their free will without any chance of repercussion. And that's why we do it amongst our citizenship. And I feel in my research, that's why ballot elections have always been promoted for officer elections.
Thank you, Dr. Rai. That was very well researched. Regent Bogost.
Thank you, President Regent Peterson. I appreciate it. And just to follow up with Dr. Rai, I do believe that the majority of boards, when I did my research, I don't think I'm quite well researched like Dr. Rai, but I saw that the majority of boards do it by ballot. And I think that it makes sense because of the fact, I mean, I know the process is definitely to make sure that there's goodwill going forward and support and confidence of any leader that is elected. And I know that when you look online for the process of boards and big boards, you'll find that this is why we have the ballot vote for this big, and it's a big move for a board to make to elect its leader, right? And even when you go on and you do your research and you find that given COVID, a lot of boards have to meet remotely, and there's a lot of services that have been developed for voting by Zoom, by whatever platform you're using. And the biggest problem they were having is to make sure that the vote would not be public, would not, would be still be by a ballot. And I found that interesting. And I was reading why is because they want to make sure that everyone can vote with their own free will. And also once someone is elected, they will lead with confidence and have that going forward. Because I think one of the most important things about this board is that we all really have the confidence in our leaders and each other. So, and I just think as far as timing, I think transparency, the timing of this, all eyes are on us. So I think the timing may not be the best either until we really research this and figure out going forward what we want to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Regent Bogost. Regent Levzow.
Thank you, Regent President Peterson. And I also would like to say thank you, and I appreciate the research that Dr. Rye has done. I think that brings a very interesting perspective and knowledge to the topic that we're discussing today. I am encouraged by the next item where we look at Regent Governance Committee that will be reviewing bylaw and policy. With my experience on other boards, we've done ballot voting, and I also agree that I think it gives us the confidence factor that would be accomplished with that. I look at this as a timing issue, and that's my my thought on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Regent Levzow. I'd make a comment. And I said this back in April. I serve on public boards, and I've seen ballots take place many times. I think there's a significant distinction between the University of Wisconsin System Board than a public company. And Dr. Rye's research is spot on as it relates to that. The difference here is every single vote that we take is a roll call vote. And there is an exception here, but I think it's unusual and unorthodox. And I think it's only been put in practice once or twice over the course of the 50-year history of the UW system. So again, the intent here was not to rewrite history. On the other hand, I do think we've had plenty of time to understand the concept that's put in front of us. And that's why I brought it back for a second time.
And thank you. I respect your comments on this, President Drew Peterson.
Thank you, Regent Levzow, Regent Klein, and then Dr. Rye.
Yes, what I would say about this, and I think it, could either way is valid. I think Regent Jones said it well for voting. But for me, what is the most important thing is to really understand what leadership is, is contemplating for the next year, to really have a robust discussion and be able to deliberate on the future of the UW system. So I would ask, to the extent, whichever way we vote, that we really structure opportunities to understand that, because I think that is the critical piece here is we've got a really smart group of regents. We have, myself excluded, we have good thinkers, and we really want to know. I hope that whichever way the vote falls on this, we have opportunities to hear from, if there are two candidates, where they're headed in the future. And I think that will be helpful to us as a board.
Thank you, Regent Klein. Dr. Rye.
Thank you, President Peterson. As I mentioned, the first thing I'd researched was actually not about public boards. It was about boards under the governance of Wisconsin statute 19.88. I'd like to ask, with permission, if council in their research of other boards actually researched other Wisconsin boards that are under the same rules that we serve under, to see if any of them have moved away from the option of ballot vote, which in my research of county boards, when they're electing their leaders to do by ballot, did that turn up anything around Wisconsin boards that are governed by the same statutes that we are?
In talking with General Counsel Quinn Williams, his previous service was with the Wisconsin DNR board, so he had some pretty significant familiarity with that. We didn't go into county boards consideration. And quite honestly, I didn't think beyond this board, because In my responsibility and fiduciary responsibility as president of the board, I've tried to make sure that we've done things as open and as transparent as we can. And in any area where we didn't do that, we've tried to learn from it and drive that forward. So that was the motivation, Ashok, nothing more and nothing less. And I stand by that today.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Regent Cologne, go ahead, Hector.
Thank you, President Peterson. I was coming prepared today to vote in favor of transparency and moving forward with this bylaw change. But after hearing Dr. Rai, that makes a lot of sense in what he's saying, especially in light of the partisan nature that we're in terms of how Board of Regents get approved on the board. And so if they vote a wrong way, they might not get approved. And so I would certainly right now feel a bit more comfortable tabling this at a minimum. But at this point, if we move forward with a vote, I'll be voting no.
Thank you, Regent Cologne. Other comments of regents?
Regent Bechtel is here. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Scott.
Okay, thanks, Drew. Sorry, everyone. I wish I could see everyone, but I've been having some technical challenges, so I'm just by phone. I'm sorry that I missed Dr. Rai's comments. They sounded valuable. My own perspective is, number one, we have bylaws in place, and those bylaws were certainly done deliberately, because this is the exception where something can be done by ballot. And I understand the exception to be something that I'm used to in advising boards, both public and private, that when it comes to matters of peer review and peer elections, where those peers then have to continue to work together and have a collegial body, it is really for the good governance, and it's for the good of the body moving forward in an effective and cohesive way, that some votes can be done by ballot and not in the open. I would compare and contrast that to a matter of public policy, which is what we routinely vote on. And this, again, is the only exception in our bylaws that is also carved narrowly so as to not affect public policy. No one would care out in the public whether Scott Bechtel votes for someone named Ed Manydeeds or someone named Mike Grebe, both of whom are absolutely qualified and both of whom could absolutely be our president. That's unquestioned. The only persons in the universe that would care about that vote are a guy named Manydeeds and a guy named Grebe. And it's because I want to work with both of them, and that's the whole basis of the reason why there's one exception under our bylaws that allows for a secret ballot. It's for collegiality, it's for that peer review, and that peer selection. So that's where I've been all along, and I haven't heard anything that convinces me otherwise to the wisdom of the original drafters of that bylaw provision. Now, to Regent Klein's point, this is exactly the kind of thing that we could discuss and debate if we had a governance review of our bylaws. But up till now, I haven't heard a convincing argument that says change the bylaws. Thank you.
Thank you, Regent Bechtel. Any other comments related to this matter? Okay, seeing none, we have a motion, we have a second. I've laid out, why I think this was appropriate in April. I remain of the view that this is the right thing to do in May. I can appreciate that we are doing a more substantive bylaw review, which I think makes perfect sense, and I look forward to that, and we'll discuss that item next. But in my mind, this is about openness, this is about transparency. We wouldn't be having these conversations if we were having a contested election, but when I went back and did that research, I felt that this was the appropriate thing to do. I think things have changed since April in a negative way. I don't I never intended that to have any impact on my fellow colleagues here, who I think very highly of. All 5 of you, now 7, who've been put forward. I think you should be confirmed. This happened well in advance of that. And in my mind, it's important for me to be consistent, which is why I have brought this forward. It has a second. And if there's no further questions or comments, I think we call the question. And I think it will be by roll call, ironically. Regent Walsh.
Thank you, Regent President Peterson. I'm glad you brought up the recent events that, and I think you all know what I'm referring to here. I'm referring to the hearing for some of our colleagues for confirmation in the Senate committee. It disturbed me greatly to have the chair of the committee ask the candidates if they would, before they left the room, commit in writing that they were going to vote a certain way for president of this board, and that they were going to vote to retain Tommy Thompson. They would promise to retain Tommy until June, which quite honestly is ridiculous. It's probably going to happen that way anyway, but this person requested a written pledge, and I have been very bothered by what happened there. I understand asking folks publicly like that. It felt like intimidation, and I haven't spoke to it greatly up until right now, but it does feel as though it's manipulative in terms of how we're going to vote. And that sets an even more intense stage for this vote, by which partly we decide if we're going to allow ourselves to be intimidated by this legislature. And I would submit that this board is charged by statute to run the University of Wisconsin system. And so we shall. And this is an important question if we intend to continue to present ourselves as the governance body of this system.
I agree with you wholeheartedly, Regent Walsh. Thank you, Karen. Other comments?
Regent Bechtel.
Yep, go ahead, Scott.
Regent Walsh, respect what you said, and I'll just come at it from the opposite political perspective as having been the last Walker appointee, but we will join hands on this, Karen, and that is that, there was a Senate committee when I was up, and there were folks who had, I guess I'll say a D behind their names, who never met me and yet voted against me. And so what I don't like, and I don't think any of us like, is the partisan nature of the legislature trying to impute politics into what we do as a independent governing board. By statute, our terms are 6 years. That's very intentional. We serve at the pleasure of the citizens of Wisconsin. We have to be appointed by a governor. We have to be confirmed by a Senate. That could be 2 sets of Republicans. It could be split. It could be 2 Democrats. But at the end of the day, we serve at the pleasure of the citizens of Wisconsin and for the good of this system. And I just do not like politics being interjected in this, and it's going to lead to a serious deterioration to our governing ability. And so that's another reason why I'm voting the way I am. And while Karen has her perspective, which I respect, and her history, and she's not wrong, and she's not wrong at all, there's 2 sides to that partisan coin, and I just wanted to be clear that both sides have been playing some of those partisan politics, and we can end that as best we can. Thank you.
Let's go to Regent Greeby and Regent Peterson, Chris Peterson. Michael?
Yeah, I guess I'd like to share a few thoughts. I think that there's been an awful lot of wisdom shared regarding this particular measure. I think what Regent Jones said makes a lot of sense. I think that new Regent Rye's review is compelling. I think that it is, to some extent, a tough question. The timing, obviously, is challenging. I'm inclined to abstain from the vote for that reason, since my name is one of the names that was mentioned. Let me share a few other thoughts, if I can. Something Drew mentioned that I think is important to say. Any of us who've spent any time serving on this board with Regents Bogost, Weatherly, Miller, Cologne, Saffold, know very well that they are excellent regents. They are dedicated, they're smart, and they certainly appear to be devoted to serving in the best interest of the University of Wisconsin. They're the kind of people that I think we want on this board serving with us. I would also say that I agree with what Regent Walsh and Regent Bechtel had to say regarding politics and the unfortunate collision that occurs sometimes between politics and our roles on the board. We should treasure our independence, unquestionably. When the University of Wisconsin was founded, the governor and legislature at the time wrote into statute significant protections of this board's independence. And that's a good thing. And as a result, it is this board, not the governor, not the legislature, who select chancellors across the system, something we're doing today. It is this board, not the governor, not the legislature, that selects and hires system vice presidents, something we're talking about commencing in some matter of months, perhaps. And it is this board and not the governor and not the legislature who select board leadership, the president and the vice president. And again, we should protect that, and we should keep politics out of that process. It is almost unnecessary to point out that we live in an environment of vicious partisanship right now. One of the very few institutions in the state of Wisconsin that has avoided it is this Board of Regents. And I believe it is essential to our ability to protect the University of Wisconsin for that to continue. I do want to make one more comment. The time when I think the collision between politics and this board becomes most uncomfortable is when it affects not just the university, but us as regents. And unfortunately, that's taken place many times in the past. I'll mention a few. These are not intended, as Regent Bechtel pointed out, this is not intended to be a partisan list. At the end of Tommy Thompson's time as governor, he and Scott McCallum appointed 5 regents. The Senate at that time was controlled by the Democrats, and they elected not to act on those 5 regents until after the upcoming gubernatorial election. They were entitled to do that. After the election, Governor Doyle appointed 5 regents who replaced the 5 who hadn't been acted on. He was entitled to do that. When I was appointed, similar to Regent Bechtel, the entire Senate Democratic caucus voted against me and said some pretty tough things about me personally and my family on the floor of the Senate. They were entitled to do that. You heard Regent Bechtel talk about the fact that he and Regent Tiedemann, in part because of controversy over the lame duck session, had the Senate Democratic caucus vote against them as well. And after they were seated, then Governor Evers filed a lawsuit to have them ejected from the Board of Regents. The Senate and the governor were entitled to do that. In this case, I think everybody is aware the governor has encouraged some of his appointees to contest this election. He's absolutely entitled to do that. And at the hearing last week, the Senate asked questions about the election. They're entitled to do that. Because they are entitled to do that, however, does not mean we need to approve or like all of those things that may be done. And I suspect that some or all of us would object to or find inappropriate some or all of those actions. My admonition would be that we do as much as we can to avoid becoming publicly intertwined with political fights and avoid commenting and criticizing too directly political actions taken by elected officials. I think there's an adage when there are two dogs fighting outside your front door, if you open your door to let one in, the other is going to follow and you're going to have a dog fight inside your house. We don't want a dog fight inside our house. We should protect our independence. We should come together as a board and act as a board to serve the best interests of the University of Wisconsin. I look forward to serving with Regent Miller, Regent Bogost, Regent Weatherly, Regent Saffold, and Regent Cologne throughout the rest of my time on this board.
Thank you, Regent Greeby. Regent Peterson.
Sorry, I almost forgot to unmute. That's a perfect segue into something that's not as deep as what everyone else is talking about. When I got a call from Regent Manydeeds a few months ago, we talked about being on the Board of Regents and what an honor it was, and I said to Ed, you know, that really the greatest compensation for being on the Board of Regents, maybe the rest of you don't agree with this, but for me, the greatest compensation, because it's an honor, obviously. I live in northwestern Wisconsin. It's still an honor, but nobody around here really cares. And what the great compensation is getting to meet and having relationships with all of you people. And having a whole year of WebEx meetings has made me almost want to start milking cows again or something. I don't know. It's just miserable. And part of the reason we're in this impasse, in my opinion, is because we don't have relationships with each other. I have never met Hector Cologne. I had a wonderful conversation with Kyle Weatherly last August, but I've never met any of you people. We've had no meetings. And I do think that we have to be optimistic that no matter what happens today, when we start meeting and start getting to know each other, it's going to make a huge difference on how we lead the university and how we work together as a team to work on the whole university thing. This is part of what is going on here has to do with the fact that we don't have relationships with one another, and then we all become political because that's what we are. We're political. No one of us got appointed to this Board of Regents without some sort of political leanings. I think you'd all agree with that. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Any other comments from board members? You know, I'll just close by saying I brought this forward in April. I brought it forward for all the right reasons. As I've self-reflected, I've felt that this was the appropriate thing to do. I think you've heard incredibly important comments today about how we feel about all of our board members. In my mind, this comes down to two items: openness and transparency. And it should not come down to politics. I would far prefer, as we all would, that it's not at all be political. And I think our timing has been unfortunate. But nevertheless, that's the motivation for why I brought this forward. I think it's important. And we have a motion and we have a second. And at this time, I will call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
We were doing a roll call, President Peterson.
Yes, well, I believe we will be.
Okay.
And we can move directly to that. Regent Walsh, I'd be comfortable with that. So, Jess, would you call the roll?
Regent President Peterson.
I vote yes.
Regent Vice President Greeby.
Abstain.
Regent Atwell.
No.
Regent Bechtel.
No.
Regent Bogus.
No.
Regent Cologne.
No.
Regent Jones.
Yes.
Regent Klein,
Yes.
Regent Levzo,
No.
Regent Manydeeds, Regent Miller,
No.
Regent Peterson,
No.
Regent Rye,
No.
Regent Saffold,
No.
Regent Stanford Taylor, Regent Tucker,
Yes.
Regent Walsh,
No.
Regent Weatherly.
No.
I have Regent President Peterson, Regent Jones, Regent Klein, and Regent Tucker voting yes. I have Regents Atwell, Bechtel, Bogus, Cologne, Levzo, Miller, Peterson, Rye, Saffold, Walsh, and Weatherly voting no. I have Regent Greeby abstaining. The motion fails.
Thank you, Jess. And thank you, everyone. Let's move on to item 6B. The second item, Resolution 6B, creates a special committee of the board to undertake a comprehensive review of the board's bylaws and develop recommendations related to good governance practices. This also came out of our April meeting as a more long-term review that is no doubt overdue. As noted in our materials, the Association of Governing Boards of Universities and Colleges identifies bylaws as one of the primary policy documents that guide the governance of a university system, establishing the rules by which a governing board organizes itself and describing the board's responsibilities and structure. AGB also recommends that boards regularly review their bylaws. As fiduciaries, regents are expected to make careful, good faith decisions in the best interest of the UW system and independent of undue influence. During the past several months, Michael and I have been engaged in conversations with board members related to the overall governance of the Board of Regents. These discussions were very productive and led to further questions and considerations that I feel should be further explored and vetted by this board. I'm proposing that the board create a special committee to consider the guidance from the AGB, and during the next several months, consider how this board can further nurture and sustain good governance practices. The special committee, comprised of 3 or 4 regents, would be expected to undertake a comprehensive review of the board's bylaws, as well as policies, operations, traditions, and processes, and develop recommendations designed to nurture and sustain good governance practices. Regent Tracy Klein has expressed interest in serving in this capacity. I would invite other interested regents to inform me of their willingness to serve, and hopefully we can have this special committee organized by our June meeting in just 3 weeks. With that as background, can I seek a motion or a second rather on Resolution 6B?
Second, Regent Walsh.
Thank you, Regent Walsh. We have a motion. We have a second. Do we have discussion on item 6B? Regent Klein.
Yes, I guess I want to just say that I'm very grateful that leadership have put this item on the agenda. I really think it's an opportunity to look at all the issues very holistically, including voting. I think it also gives us a chance to really look at how we can be effective. One of the things that all of you have mentioned and done so very eloquently is that politics sometimes intrudes, and I think our fiduciary duty, I continue to believe our fiduciary duty is University of Wisconsin and making sure that this is the best public institution of higher education in the land. And so I think that our role is critically important, maybe now more than ever, maybe now because of the politics more than ever. And sometimes I think we get constrained by bylaws that are older than haven't been looked at recently and that could provide more flexibility, could allow us more conversations, more deliberations. And so I very much hope you'll all vote for this resolution today. It's, as most of you know, I never thought I'd have to argue hard to get the job of helping to revise bylaws. But I've been suggesting this for a year, and I think Michael has worked tirelessly with me to kind of look at how it could work and has actually developed some thoughts that are extremely thoughtful on what we could do to kind of enhance our deliberation. So with that, I put in my pitch and I hope we vote yes.
Thank you, Regent Klein. We have a motion. We have a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Excellent. So please let me know in the next week or so if you're interested in serving on that committee, joining Regent Klein. And Tracy, thank you for your leadership. That concludes today's open session agenda. Vice President Grebe, will you please read the motion to move us into closed session now?
I move that the Board of Regents move into a closed session to A, consider a salary adjustment for a UW-Madison employee as permitted by 19.851C of the Wisconsin statutes. B, consider the appointment of a chancellor of UW River Falls as permitted by 1985-1C and E of the Wisconsin statutes. And C, confer with legal counsel regarding potential litigation in which it is likely to become involved regarding a contract as permitted by section 1985-1G of the Wisconsin statutes.
Regents, do we have a second?
Second.
Mike Jones?
Thank you, Mike. We have a motion. We have a second. Jess, will you call the roll to move into closed session?
Regent President Peterson,
Yes.
Regent Vice President Grebe,
Yes.
Regent Atwell, Regent Bechtel,
Yes.
Regent Bogus,
Yes.
Cologne,
Yes.
Regent Jones,
Yes.
Klein,
Yes.
Regent Levzo,
Yes.
Regent Manydeeds, Regent Miller,
Yes.
Regent Peterson,
Yes.
Regent Rye,
Yes.
Regent Saffold,
Yes.
Regent Stanford Taylor, Regent Tucker,
Yes.
Regent Walsh,
Yes.
Regent Weatherly.
Yes.
Please give us a moment to clear the line.